music would be Trent Reznor of 9 Inch Nails. The new album, The Fragile, meticulously, beautifully crafted album. It's been a while since we've heard from you. How does it feel to be back with the album?
It's good. I mean, it's a bit strange. The tour's fairly towards the beginning of it. And it's strange to go from sitting in the studio where you work at your own pace and in your own little environment to being dropped into a situation much like this one where you're on display. It's a strange feeling. Yeah.
The transition is smooth for you?
No.
No.
No, I'm not fully out of it yet. I'm still a little bit weird around a lot of people. But the shows are going well, and it's good to get feedback again. It's nice to... It's one thing when you're sitting by yourself, scratching your head, and thinking, trying to work things out and wondering how things are going to work. And it's another thing when you're in front of people playing music and immediately seeing the response. Mm-hmm. It's a good feeling, though.
Yeah, it must be good. The Fragile, what did you set out to do? I mean, you spent 2 years creating this and really spent a lot of time with it. But what was the diving off point when you came up with the title Fragile? What were you trying to capture?
Well, when we finished Downward Spiral tour, which took a long time, it was over 2 years of touring, and then I went right into doing a Manson album, and I found myself pretty disenchanted with everything. And musically, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. On the business side of music, I started hating, and I realized what my job had become. I really disliked what it turned into on a number of levels. So when I started The Fragile, it was about me rediscovering that I love music and forgetting about all the crap that comes with it, but just getting back to really making music. And I felt that I'd kind of emerged from the downward spiral somewhat damaged state. And I wanted to make a record that wasn't made of steel, and it wasn't invulnerable, but it wasn't a tough thing. It was frail by its nature. And the title came first. And then I just started exploring my own subconscious to see what came out. And it turned into this sprawling thing that I thought would be fairly long, demanding listen of people. That's what I really wanted to do. So.
Cool. We have a question from Conrad. Conrad.
Hi, Trent. I'd like to know what aspects of classical music do you incorporate with your music?
I studied piano for quite a while in my youth and got a classical kind of backdrop. And I don't consciously sit down and try to apply that, but I realize that harmonically I do, that it comes out when I start working on things. On this record, like impressionistic music, Debussy was a fairly big influence, and I tried to explore the idea of, like impressionistic music that implies a visual. A lot of these songs started with a visual kind of, I'd picture a place, and then I'd just try to make a soundtrack or setting to put that in. That's probably the most direct influence that way.
Cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, a lot of your video work is always really incredibly beautiful or interesting images, and you've done soundtrack work. What are some of the visuals that came to you when you were creating The Fragile?
Well, I spent a fair amount of time in Big Sur, going insane when I started this record, and it's like a really beautiful place on the side of a mountain that was very strange place, and that was a good place to sit back and just think of, visualize things. And then I'd take that to the studio. I'm not making a lot of sense right now, but in the studio we'd sit around and you might picture, say, a swamp and try to take a riff, maybe on guitar, and try to almost dress the set with sound to make it seem like it might be in that place. And we really started most songs with that kind of idea, trying to put it in an environment and a mood.
Did you use a great deal of different noises on this particular album? I was reading like ukulele and different sort of sound sources.
Yeah, when I play any instrument, I can make noise on it. It was a lot more organic things this time. And instead of relying on synthesizers and samplers, a lot of it came from real instruments because I wanted to contribute to the sound of something that might fall apart. And Real instruments have natural imperfections. They're out of tune a little bit, or can be. And I wanted to have a naivety and kind of the feeling that at any moment it might topple.
Is it like that struggle between sort of organizing chaos and trying to like make form when things are just about to fall apart? What's interesting about that moment for you?
Well, I think lyrically, and I think where my head was at trying to attain a sense of order, but knowing that it was flawed and fatal at the same time and tragic. I have some sense of you're trying to keep things together. I think in the song The Fragile, I did that the best to me, where it was coming from a point of view of trying to help somebody or save something or preserve something, but you're on no firm ground to stand on yourself. So.
Peter, you have a question?
Yeah, I was wondering what the driving force was behind your lyrics and what makes them so powerful.
Are you writing from like an autobiographical place, or?
I think what it is years ago when I did the music that was going to be Pretty Hate Machine, I'd always wanted to be in a band. I thought I wanted to do this, I thought. And when I finally had the courage to sit down and try to write music, first I just tried to write lyrics just to have lyrics to put in a song. It didn't mean anything, and they were bad. And it wasn't until I had the courage to I realized I was keeping a journal of like things that I wouldn't show anybody, and things I wasn't really proud to feel, but I had to get it out somehow. And so when I incorporated them into a few songs, and I realized that I'd struck something that made me feel better to get it out, and it had an honesty and an integrity to it that I think can only come from meaning something instead of pretending that you're a character doing something. So I kind of used that as the framework for Nine Inch Nails, where every record I've done really expresses where my head's been at when I've done it. And I think it has a truthfulness to it and an integrity or sincerity that I think that's where it's going. I know that, I mean, now I'm faced with some, hey, The Fragile doesn't sound like Downward Spiral. In America, it hasn't sold as well as Downward Spiral did. Did you think it's a failure? And no, I don't. It reflects where I've been when I did it, and that's the record I had to make, and very proud of it. So.
Cool, yeah. Absolutely. We're going to take a look at Into the Void, and it's kind of almost like such a microscopic kind of biological look at you. So like it goes right into every hair follicle, every skin cell.
The pimple is actually Danny. It's not
okay. So once again, I guess they're sort of reflecting of the sort of look at having to look inwards at yourself, or how does this parallel?
Kind of, I could destroy the mystique of that video, but I'm actually very unhappy with that video.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Why?
It's a long, long story, but it started as one idea and it wound up as another, and
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay, we'll take a look at that, and then we'll talk about more about your process and so forth with Trent Reznor. Stick around. All right, we're with Trent Reznor talking about the Nine Inch Nails' latest album, The Fragile. So, Trent, I was reading Time magazine, came across an interesting quote that you had talked about. It said, I think that anything that is dangerous and exciting about rock music has moved over to rap or hip-hop. What happened to rock?
It's suffering from a real case of the blands right now, I think. To me, I mean, growing up, I wasn't allowed to listen to Kiss, so of course that was what it represented something that was you couldn't get, or it was some subversive thing. And I think just, I mean, generally through the history of rock, it's been, what's been good about it is the rebelliousness and the anti-establishment and the rule-breaking and the lack of political correctness, perhaps. And I think people want excitement and danger, and if you look at I mean, the rock bands out now, I don't see much of that. It's been sucked into the pop world. And I think when you see a DMX or on down the line, there's a aggression and there's something your parents wouldn't like about it. That's where most interesting stuff is happening now, in terms of outrageousness, to me, anyway.
Do you find that you, like, because some bands would argue and say, oh, no, we're dangerous. you know, like say the Corns and Olympic Bizkits of the world. But what to you is sort of missing there in the equation of?
I mean, there's a point to that. There is some of that in there. Personally, I find a sense of lack of sincerity, a bit of posturing. You know, and that's what bands that I find that I like, I inherently have a sense that they mean it, and that matters to me. If I think somebody's just following the trend because that's what you do today.
Do you think it's like the industry that kind of makes, or that artists choose to sort of buff the edges because they think they're going to sell more, or?
I think it comes down to an artist's decision, which is independent, which is specific to each artist, of why they're doing it. And if they're doing it to, I mean, I can sound, I'm trying to put my
you don't want to
vulgarity censorship chip in right
okay.
now. I can sound full of myself, but I can tell you that I'm glad to make money doing this, but I'm doing it because I love music, and this is what I would do anyway. And if I had to work at McDonald's to make music at night, that's what I would do. But I think a lot of people now are doing music just to make money and trying to hoodwink people into believing that there's some sincerity there. That's just my opinion on it.
Yeah.
But I think when you're in a climate where you're much more congratulated on your business sense than you are your talent, that something's not quite right with the scene right now.
Well, you're seeing it in a lot of different arts too, where it's like really broad caricatures of very, very generalized things, a sort of pablumized, homogenized type of art. And I wonder sometimes, is that what people want, or is that what they're merely given?
Well, I think to a degree people will absorb what they're spoon-fed, you know, and if you look at playlists and radios and videos now, it's apparent that people are buying what they're told to buy. But I do think there's a contingent of people out there that demand more from their art and want to get a greater meaning or depth, or want to read lyrics and think about it, or wonder what thought went into it, and then not treat music as just disposable crap that you buy on a little plastic thing and throw out when you're sick of it, you know?
Yeah. We have a question from Fred. Hey, Fred.
Hi, Trent. I was wondering what your relationship with Marilyn Manson is right now.
A good question.
Somebody has to say it.
I mean, we went through quite a long period of not caring much for each other. We'll see. Next week should yield some interesting results, perhaps. I'll just leave it at that.
I had heard that you guys were sort of making amends.
You never know.
Yeah.
Watch and see.
What is it about, you were talking about that what inspires you is a lot of hip-hop and rap. You have Dr. Dre on the album. What is it about hip-hop and rap that you're loving these days?
I think that since it is a relatively new genre of music, I think that more interesting experimental things are coming out of that. That and like real underground dance stuff, you know, in the Aphex Twin world and the Autechers of the world, Square Pushers. I think that's the most exciting new music I've heard, or new things come out of that. As opposed to what you're finding in the rock world, where it seems to be treading the same sea of the same stuff. And, I mean, I spent a lot of time listening to hip-hop and rap, and just rhythmically, and as far as synthesis of different genres of music, I think that there's a lot of interesting stuff going on there. For me, more exciting than...
yeah, the creators are giving themselves freedom to create as well.
Seems more, less rules involved. And every once in a while, someone will stumble into something great, and then a million people rip it off. But I'm seeing more of those stumbles happen in that world, to me, than I am in rock and roll.
At the end of the downward spiral, you're saying that it sort of, you came to a place where it was like, oh, it was kind of, sounds kind of pretty horrific in terms of the personal impact it had in your life. Where do you find you are now in terms of putting this album out, you're on the road? You seem to me like you're in a pretty good space.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, it's, being on the road's strange because it's not like real life, and I'm not sure what real life is, if it's what I think it was or what it is now, and it's weird. It's weird being around people and treated differently, and there's lots of strange things, and Downward Spiral, when we started that tour, we were kind of a medium, small band. When we ended it, we were a pretty big band. And we never really had time to sit down and really assess when the change happened or how it happened.
Or how you felt about it.
Yeah, and you realize the person that got off the tour bus a couple years later wasn't the same person that got on it, and not necessarily for the better. And on this record, I think there's a different sense of maturity, maybe. And I'm out with a mission this time, and it's to show people this is a cool record.
Cool.
And I'm energized and ready to do that. Ask me this a few months from now, and it may be a different story to hear, but, you know.
You're going to be playing in Toronto tonight, and then tomorrow in Montreal, and doing June 2nd in Vancouver. And do you mind if we just go out to the window and say hi to some of your fans out there? Cool. Okay. To make this social meeting a bit more easy, this fellow here has a question. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering how that Dr. Dre remixing Even Deeper, how that came to be and how you feel about that.
How did you acquire Dr. Dre on the album?
Trey and I have been friends for several years, and just kind of always were intrigued by how each other worked on stuff. So, it was a track that we were both in the same city at the same time, and got to hang out with him in the studio and see how he worked, and it was a cool thing. We may do something in the future together.
That's pretty funny, eh? Totally watched and looked at, and while you're trying to have a conversation, somebody's saying, "Oh my God, he looked at me." Pretty crazy thing. Well, here you are, and once again, taking on North America.